Imagine waking up to an email that your server has been blocked because it's attacking other machines. That's exactly what happened to a developer named Eduardo on December 3rd, 2024. His own server was attacking people. His Next.js app wasn't serving his website anymore. It was mining cryptocurrency for someone else. So whatever it was mining, it wasn't even going to him. And the craziest part of this, the vulnerability that made this possible got and I'm not using hyperbole, a perfect 10 out of 10 severity score. This is bad as it gets. And it's because of React. So we probably really need to dive into this. There's a lot that we need to cover today. We're going to be covering non-technical explanations, so that way if you aren't super technical, you're going to be aware of what happened. We're definitely going to dive into the technical of what made this possible, but I want to also kind of explain what's happened since then, so that way you're aware as of the time of recording this and right now, all the fixes and remediation that's taken place to make sure that companies as a whole are taken care of, and how developers are kind of moving accordingly. Before we jump into all that, and before we dive into this, we are back with another one. Another one. This is the Programming Podcast. Can I steal 30 seconds real fast? I was looking at the dashboard and the analytics, and I saw that 45% of you are not subscribed, but looking at the content, which I think is great. It's an indicator that the algorithm knows that you like this kind of content and it's serving it to you every single week. It would be an amazing resource for us if you just look below to see if you're subscribed or not. And if you're not, maybe fix that for us, right? And it could be like the unofficial start of our friendship, where we're coming back every single week. And it's an indicator to Leon and myself to know that we're delivering the right kind of content to you. And we put a lot of time and effort into this to making sure that we deliver the right developer content that we want to see, but you would benefit from as well.
And we're getting ready to travel home for the holidays. And it would mean a lot to me and my mama if we saw that percentage go down when you click subscribe. So do us a huge holiday favor, not for me, not for Danny, but for all of our mamas, to see that number go in the right direction. Appreciate you clicking the button. It means more than you could ever imagine.
We have a ton to cover. Have you kept up with this, Leon?
Yeah, I've been reading up on it pretty heavily since it dropped. I think, just without saying right off the rip, very important PSA. You must update React. If you have any projects that are on 19, 19.1, 19.1, 19.2, like it's an immediate stop listening to the podcast, go update your application. It is a vulnerability, especially if you're not on the major kind of hosting platforms that have done some mitigation around this. And so I think this is like the important piece. If you listen to this podcast, you have some of those older projects that you've been working on, you have friends that have been working on it, maybe haven't heard the podcast or heard this news yet, you must encourage them to update. That's the only true fix for a lot of this at the moment.
Yeah, the industry, from what I've seen, has spent almost $750,000 in a weekend fixing this and working towards this. Yeah. It is not something insignificant or passing like, oh, it's an interesting story. It's like, this is affecting a lot of people right now. If you've got side projects that are up, especially if you're not on like a major hosting platform, like Leon said, you need to be on top of this. And I mean, Leon, I know you have Eduardo's thing pulled up. Do you want to go over that first, so before we start jumping in everything?
Yeah, I think for some of this, we're just going to kind of read, because it's really interesting to hear like the first-hand account of what's happening here, and then dive deeper. This is, like Danny said, a 10 out of 10 attack when these CVEs, which it's kind of like when a hack is made public, when people want to let others know about it. It stands for common vulnerabilities and exposure. This is a 10 out of 10, and so there's a lot of stuff that happened in terms of how this was reported, how fixes were made, but there's real impact to this. And so reading Eduardo's impact, I think, is going to be really helpful for folks to contextualize what happened here. So
yeah, matter of fact, before you read that, let me give a quick like synopsis of important things that people should know. So the important things of what happened, so that way it lays the, I guess, the tone or the edge of whatever essentially happened. A security researcher named Lachlan Davidson discovered a way to send specially crafted messages to any website using React server components, right? That message as people found out, could trick the server into running any code that the attacker wanted. This is called RCE, which we'll cover in detail in a moment. It's like the holy grail of kind of hacking in that regard. Think of it like finding any restaurant using like any specific type of ordering system that would let you walk into their kitchen and cook whatever you want. Would not be ideal, especially if they don't have the ingredients or something like that. So we'll dive into like a lot of this in a moment, but I wanted to kind of set that up a little bit so that we have an idea.
So right off the rip, this says, I've been hacked, and traced the malware's wallet to see how much money they actually made from this new exploit. If you use Next.js or React, read this. I woke up to a terrifying email from Hetzner. NetScan detected. Hetzner is kind of like a really common platform for folks to self-host on, very cheap servers. A lot of folks that choose to go the self-hosting route use that platform. And so this is scary for a lot of folks that decide to leave the traditional Vercel type orgs. Anyone that's kind of not on one of those platforms is deeply affected by this. My server was blocked and a botnet was using my IP to attack others. I dug into the logs, and when I found the anatomy of the attacks, the symptoms I logged, and I saw this mess. CPU usage was 361%, and there was a process that was running wild and random connects to an IP in the Netherlands. My server wasn't serving my app anymore. It was mining crypto for someone else. So from this exploit, they were able to take advantage of this exploit, take over their server, and start mining cryptocurrency as fast as possible. It wasn't a random SSH brute force. It was inside my Next.js container. So meaning that like Next.js is running on this server, and there's not something that like is happening that they got secondary access to the server. It was an exploit in the code that was running in this container on the server that enabled them to run whatever they wanted on this server. The malware was sophisticated. It renamed itself to make it look like web servers. Things like were renamed to Apache. It even had a killer script that hunted down other attackers' miners to kill the competition. So if somebody else used the exploit, it would turn off their exploit to prioritize theirs. That's genius. The root cause, literally, was the recent React Next.js CVE exploit, the one that we're talking about today, as the entry point. The project was running Next and was behind Cloudflare DNS, but their recent fix didn't work apparently. So some of these like other bigger providers have done things to like help stop these types of attacks. The Cloudflare DNS one probably doesn't affect this that much, but there have been pushes by the major providers to help some of this stuff that we'll talk about. But the fatal error was mine. My Docker container was running as root. So yeah, if the container has root and your container's corrupted, then they have root access to your machine to do whatever the heck they want. Coolify deploys this automatically when using Nix packs, and I never changed it. Coolify is like a very common way to self-host applications. It's an open source project that makes it easy to run your applications on something instead of, say, using Vercel. So because of user root, the malware could install cron, systemd, persistent scripts, and survive reboots. So it could run scripts on a cadence. Even if you turned off the machine, it had a ability to like restart itself. So this is a pretty sophisticated hack. The React vulnerability of itself is very sophisticated. We're going to try and break it down in plain language, but then you're also seeing like all this other accessory stuff that makes this exploitable. The ability to run as root, the ability to like stop other folks that have found the same exploit. This isn't just like a run-of-the-mill thing here. There's a lot that's going on here. I was able to infect my whole server from a single Next.js Docker. The forensic, I ran a Docker diff on the container. The hacker didn't just run a script. They install a whole tool set. They have an installer, persistence, a wallet config, and the fix was I killed the container, scrubbed the host, and extracted the malware for analysis. But the real fix is in the Dockerfile. If you're deploying node next, do not use default root. You must run add user next. So kind of like some things that you could do to mitigate this. And check your containers now. So again, call to action. If you're running any of these React version, especially if you're not on the major hosting provider, even if you are, you got to update, right? There's some kind of like technical pieces here, talking about how the crypto miner hosts worked. And then the last piece here is like the money. I dug deeper and recovered the config file. It was a Monero address. Monero is known for being a little bit more anonymous maybe than other things. That's debatable, but it's very common for folks to use Monero as an extra layer of protection from their being revealed who they are. And I tracked the hacker's wallet on his mining pool. My server wasn't alone, just one of 415 active zombies on this botnet. And they are burning the CPU of 400 plus cloud servers to earn, guess how many millions? $4 a day.
Yep. But I will say the CVE was trending on Twitter, right? And I saw a report, I think it was 77,000 websites. So $4 across 77,000, I mean.
Now, the thing is too, right? Like, that's just crypto. This is a full root access exploit. And I think one of the important things we'll talk about is like chain of like reporting here. And if this exploit had just been released in the wild, it could have been pretty devastating. And these are just the public instances that we know about. We have no idea how long privately this has been exploitable. You have full root access to servers running anything that you want. And that's kind of that's where you get the 10 out of 10 severity on this. It's a very clever exploit that enables you to run any malicious code you want on any server that has this React version. And so all of that we can talk about. Crypto's one thing, but we have no idea what else may have been happening for a while that this exploit's been out there. Yeah. So they end it with just I'm rebuilding from scratch with a fresh VPS. The lesson was expensive, but at least they caught it before they nuked my account permanently. I have the IP for all the other machines mining with the malware. Not sure I can help them. Feel free to contact me if you're doing InfoSec, and then stay safe. So a very interesting exploit, an interesting journey to like a real impact of how this is being utilized to get full access, to do things, to run malicious code. So I guess we can maybe talk a little bit about what the exploit is, how it works, and then maybe kind of like the what happened in the background.
Yeah, there's a lot of angles that we need to cover. I'm happy that we covered Eduardo's first. And so to kind of explain this, because maybe you're someone in tech that isn't a dev related position, but you've loved the podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us. So let me explain this in terms that maybe makes sense. Or maybe you're newer and maybe you're new to tech, or you're not even security at all. And so you're trying to understand what this looks like. So let's imagine that you're at a restaurant, like digital, those like digital ordering tablets. Normally you would just type like cheeseburger, order goes to the kitchen, simple, right? React server components are like a fancy restaurant where they bring out the food as it's ready, right? So like salad is ready, cool, salad's coming out. Steak takes 10 minutes, cool, it comes later. Instead of it just being all held at one time and you get the entirety of the meal, including the salad that took 30 seconds to prepare, it's at that 10-minute mark with that steak, right? That wouldn't be a great experience for anybody going to a restaurant anyway. If I order my appetizers, I don't want it with my entree anyway, right? I want that little separation to exist. To do that, the kitchen, or in this case, like the server, needs a way to tell the table, the client, like, hey, here's a salad. The steak is coming in 5 minutes. It's kind of hard to send data and then being like, hey, there's more to come. They don't necessarily know how to look at that, how to think about it. So they needed a way for this to communicate. And so they created flight protocols, right? And this is exactly what ended up getting hijacked in this regard. Lachlan figured out that if he typed a specific word or weird phrase into like a special instructions box, the kitchen would just listen and obey it, right? Yeah. So he could send a message that looked like a food order, but actually it said, open the cash register and give me that money. And the kitchen was like, it's on the ticket. It's got to be right. Customer must have asked for this specifically. Customer's always right. So let's go ahead and open that register and give them that money. But as we know, it's not right. But machines are machines. They don't have that intuition. So it's just following instructions at that point. But
Bobby Table strikes again.
I'm going to say.
I don't know if folks know the classic XKCD comic. And so I'm going to actually pull it up real quick. Hold on. So there's a very classic XKCD comic where this mother gets called, and it's her son's school calling. And the school says, your son's school, we're having some computer trouble. And she says, oh dear, did he break something? And the school says, in a way. And they said, did you really name your son Robert Drop Table Students? Oh yes, little Bobby Tables, we call him. Well, we've lost this year's student records. I hope you're happy, and I hope you've learned to sanitize your database inputs, right? So this is a very common thing that folks prepare against, right? This idea of when a user is able to send something to the server or to a database, you need to sanitize it and make sure they're not putting malicious commands inside that will drop your entire student records or convince the worker at the restaurant to hand over all the money, right? You want to sanitize these things. The beauty of this exploit, as Danny was explaining, is not that it's just a string that you're passing that you'd have to sanitize. It utilized the way JavaScript behaves to make it look like JavaScript was making the request. So in this instance, as though you put on a disguise that was the server, and you walked into the kitchen and said, actually, I need all the money for the manager. And they're like, oh, this is the server we talk to every single day. We trust this person. Of course we should listen to their request. And so it's still a version of this, like needing to sanitize your inputs. But in this case, it looked like the inputs were just the regular JavaScript functions that were happening. And so that's the beauty of this. They figured out a way to disguise this thing as regular JavaScript. And so that's kind of where we can kind of go a little bit deeper and have some fun with it.
We'll get back to the show in a second, but first, a word from our sponsors. Financial literacy is important, especially if you are in a position where you are changing careers and income brackets. More income can create larger financial issues if you don't budget correctly. So this episode is sponsored by Lucas Casares, certified financial planner and founder of Level Up Financial Planning, where he specializes in serving early and mid-career tech professionals to help you take your financial confidence to the next level.
Danny and I have helped thousands of people level up in tech, often going from 0 to 6-figure careers, and we've seen all kinds of mistakes. Level Up Financial Planning helps you gain clarity on all of your finances. This includes prioritizing manager-employer stock, retirement planning, tax planning and preparation, college planning, and as a special deal for our listeners, you get a complimentary meeting with Lucas. So please visit levelupfinancialplanning.com to find out more.
He's been a great supporter of the show, and to be honest, a lot of people have already checked him out.
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking him out. Now back to the show.
Yeah.
So now that the non-technical are aware of what's happened, let's kind of dive into the technical a little bit.
Yeah.
So the way that I'll explain this, all right, let's think about, let's say you have like an async server component with suspense, right? Let's say the component takes 3 seconds to load. Well, now that you have this like slow component that is async, you could wrap it in suspense, have a loading state. The rest of the page will load, and until that component is ready, it won't show, essentially, right? Or it'll show that loading state for that component, but the rest of the page loads. So kind of like the food scenario, it works great in that regard, right? Now it's passing a promise from server to client, which blows my mind when I really think about it. Like, we're at a stage where that's so simple at this point, right?
Yeah.
But you have this function, slow function, server component. You pass the promise itself to the client component, right? So let's say client button, get slow data, et cetera, et cetera. But then you have the client component, right? We suspend it until the async function is resolved, right? The flight protocol, when we think about this, right? The magic of a server component is that you can pass a promise from the server to the client, right? React, using this flight protocol, it's serializing the promise. So it's sending a chunk of data that looks like 0, and it's a JavaScript object where it's like status is resolved model, value is ABC, whatever you want it to be, right? And inside that value, you can reference other chunks, right? Using like $ syntax. So like, let's say $ symbol and then the number 1 is actually telling it, hey, go look at chunk number 1. It's a little reference system, right? But that is where the exploit is. The code that looks up those references is something like return value, and in brackets, it's saying the path, right? There's no validation.
Yeah.
So what happens if you send it a path of proto or root or something along those lines? You're walking into the prototype chain situations. So if you walk up the prototype chain, it's like proto, constructor, constructor. And do you know what the constructor of the object constructor is? Function. And the function constructor allows you to turn a string of text into just straight up executable code. And you literally trick React into looking up function constructors, passing it a string, and saying, run crypto miner.
Yeah.
And React is like, execute it.
Yep.
And so the fix, and this is the part, this kills me. And it kind of goes back to one thing that I always say, fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. The fix for this is literally one line of code. If this object does not have value and path, throw an error. That one line prevents you from accessing proto. That one line is the difference between absolutely secure, no fear, to I've literally lost everything on my server.
Yep.
It is a massive, massive difference. And so to explain one thing in regards to flight protocol, one big thing is like, if you were to send a promise over the internet, JSON can't really say, hey, more data is coming later. So when you think about the flight protocol with those chunks, it's like saying, here's part 1 of 3. So it now knows that there's more coming. So like if you're chunking it in a really efficient way, it's really great. Number one, it's almost like creating your own shipping labels for things. And this is phenomenal for a lot of situations. Like I'm thinking of like maybe a form component, like you're sending some information and saying, hey, here's customer 1, 2, and 3 are on the way or something along those lines. Or maybe customer 1 has one property right now. Here's the information. Properties 2 and 3 will show up afterwards. So really useful. It's like, it's actually pretty incredible. So it's not like it's something that's flawed or terrible and you should stay away from it. Not the case. But it also kind of goes to one big thing. And I know, especially if you live in a bubble on social media, it's very easy to buy the hype of get away from the big corp and do your own thing and roll your own thing. It's kind of goes back to like why I don't really like rolling my own auth. Situations like this, like if you leave a vulnerability and you don't catch it, there's no team of dedicated professionals that are there to mitigate whatever issues that you're going to run into. In this scenario, if you were on some of the bigger platforms, they had a lot of things in place to kind of protect you. Not all, but what happened as soon as they knew it was a thing, probably before the average public was really aware of it, they were jumping on it. But you know what else? There was a lot done for all the flack that they may get on social media. Vercel, I can't imagine how a company handled this whole situation better. We need to really jump into that. I want to kind of pin that for a moment. But Vercel, above and beyond, in my opinion, as far as like a masterclass in how to handle a issue like this in a public setting. Like it was extremely incredible.
Yeah. I like even the haters coming out on this one being like, actually y'all did pretty good on this one, which is
it's hard to really hate how they handled it.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing too, like, and if you're not aware of this, there is a website called HackerOne, among many others, where companies will post bugs or they'll have bounties, and that actually helped a lot of the solutioning for what ended up coming. So the developer community as a whole came together, but a lot of good wins here.
Yeah. It's just before we move on to that, just a beautiful exploit. Like just so interesting to think about, like React just not thinking to check then your constructors, right? And then putting your malicious stuff inside the JavaScript internals because it's not doing that simple has on property check. Like what to sit there and think about this. I think if we go back to like kind of Guillermo talking about the exploit, they use like a really beautiful sentence in the beginning of like their explanation of what everything's happening. So I mean that's a good transition. This
Yeah, I was gonna say,
vulnerability is a doozy, a juxtaposition of a glaring omission of a safety check combined with a stunningly brilliant mechanism to exploit it. The solution is like a brain teaser, a riddle to test your hacking skills, or as people in the community call it, a CTF, a capture the flag exercise. Such a interesting thing to like. I know a lot of people are going through it, right? A lot of people are having real pain tied to this, but just to, as technologist and being able to like see all the reporting, see all the things that go into like think through all this chain, it makes me like appreciate a lot of the tools that we use and also think about JavaScript in a different way. Like it's just a really cool exploit that I think if you're listening to this podcast, it's worth your time to like dive deep into what happened here to come away with a better understanding of JavaScript, to come away with a better understanding of React, and to see how people would actually approach solving something like this in real time. Because that's what they were doing. They were solving this in real time. And that's kind of why they're getting a lot of praise for how they handled everything.
I almost think it would be valuable to share what Guillermo shared. The write-up, I think, was incredible. I got so much out of it, but I feel like there's a lot of good value here for someone who hasn't necessarily read it. If you want to read it, you know what? I don't ever do this, but like I'll include the link to his article in the show notes. By the way, this episode is not sponsored by Vercel or Next.js or any of these, but this is pretty incredible and valuable, I think, from a grand scheme of things. Maybe covering this real fast will be useful for everybody involved.
All right. So they made a post and they're calling this React to Shell because it's basically what's happening using React to get shell access. The strange data structure is responsible for many sleepless nights this week across the industry. This is the now infamous React to Shell payload as discovered by Lachlan Davidson, now widely circulating. I want to provide my point of view on this attack, how it came about, and what we're doing, and the lessons learned. Then he gives that beautiful line that we just read, and he gives a background now on JS, React, and Flight. First, as a JavaScript primer, JS is famous for its highly dynamic nature. Types are dynamic, even code execution is dynamic. This hack exploits those two unique properties of the language by abusing its inherent duck typing and prototypal nature to fool React's parser, and JavaScript's ability to execute arbitrary dynamic code at runtime or eval it. It makes this most severe possible class vulnerability, the CVE, resulting in a 10 out of 10. This is kind of going back to what we're talking about, this ability for to exploit JavaScript to run any function you want, like to run any set of code you want based off of this exploit. This is really wild that you can have any executable you want go through this chain. Let's also understand the React side. The vulnerability lies in the React Flights protocol, which is used to encode inputs and outputs for React server functions and server components. Again, kind of talking about the components that Danny laid out, this idea of like, let's say you are at a restaurant and you're trying to order something, the server could come to your table and put together your whole salad in front of you, like at one of the fancy restaurants, or they could make the whole salad in the kitchen and bring it to you, right? Why does React need this? The best way to think about React server components is a BFF, backend for the front end framework, not unlike GraphQL. To make complex UIs really fast, React streams complex data that matches the shape of rendering tree in one hop. All this is about speed. Flight is the protocol that allows to transmit this data back and forth. It's very powerful and complete. Imagine if JSON were able to represent data that's not yet ready, like a promise, so that your UI can render as fast as possible while some backend or database hasn't responded yet. With power comes responsibility, so Lachlan smelled trouble. Kind of going back to what Danny was talking about with the suspense, you're loading in that information that you might need. You get to see the UI, but as that thing loads, then that data populates in. The exploit. To explain the exploit, I use Maple's POC as a basis, which is shorter than Lachlan's. Maple was the first person to exploit the vulnerability 30 hours after the patch came out. That the public fix was available in GitHub for everyone to see, and that it took this long to crack is a testament to Lachlan's discovery, which he put 100 hours of work into. That seemingly innocent request body took days of relentless research and trial and error. It's hard to know if Maple had help or not. As we partner with industry peers to protect the internet, a leak of critical clue happened, which will make sense later. I was able to simplify Maple's POC further. To my knowledge, this is being a minimum viable exploit. And so in this, they're showing the structure of the JavaScript that enables this exploit to happen. There's a couple key pieces here. It looks kind of like a big object for folks that aren't able to see the thing that maybe we can put up on screen or that we'll link below. The important piece here is there's this prefix that's just a string of code. That's a console log with this beautiful trailing double / which will become important later on. And then this get method tied to the stuff Danny was talking about earlier, the bling one, then constructor. Basically, the stuff is in this object is everything that the exploit will use to get access to the constructor function to then eval this code and give you React to shell access to run anything you want. This is the body is sent to any server running the vulnerable flight code, like modern Next.js apps. The console log string will be evaluated server side. That string can do virtually anything: run programs, extract secrets, make network calls. It's as bad as it gets. There have been a lot of really interesting exploits recently. This is, as they're saying, as bad as it gets. There's always different exploits where you want the server to start doing stuff on your behalf. And we've seen a couple other big exploits recently where they were pretending like calls were coming internally to a network, and that's one way you can get it to start doing requests on your behalf. This supersedes all those exploits that came recently. This is like full access to do whatever the heck you want. There's no mimicking. It's just doing what you want it to, running what you want it to run. The two key ingredients of the exploit, 1 and 0, are called chunks and flight lingo. The entry point to the exploit is, as I foreshadowed earlier, Flight's key and awesome capability is to stream promises data. The syntax for that is the @ symbol in the 1 colon, and then there's like the bling @0 chunk. It's saying 0 is a promise. So again, this is where we start to see that cloaking, right? Where this stuff is using generic JavaScript objects and pieces of the language, and then we're going to use that to obfuscate what gets sent to the server. The server is going to see these things that it thinks is just regular JavaScript. It doesn't have a checking mechanism, so it treats it as though that it's just regular JavaScript, right? So if you were sending a string to a server, you would always sanitize it. You would make sure there's nothing malicious in it. Are you going to check the JavaScript that you know is regular JavaScript going to the server? That's something else to think about, and what makes this exploit so beautiful. Now, what is this resolve model business? Is the genius piece of the exploit. While Flight is intended to transport user objects, Lachlan found a way to confuse React. He's essentially expressing internal state, an object that's supposed to be private and contain React's internal bookkeeping. Anytime React has to represent an in-flight object, it uses an internal data structure that keeps track of its status. Resolve model means the value is ready to be used. So again, kind of what Danny was talking about, like this idea of stuff can be sent back and forth. We have this internal state, and there's like these things that we just expect React to be using that are being that are being taken advantage of here. Couple of big pieces here, just kind of the technical bit of what happened. The key to the hack is the then piece. In JavaScript, if an object quacks like a promise, meaning it has then it's a promise. Since we use this string, React will eventually await and then this data. To abuse this machinery, we set the then, which we'll call recursively. This is where Flight's glaring omission happens. This colon syntax is designed to introduce references between user-defined objects, not to access the internal machinery of the JS runtime. You'll see that many exploits floating around unnecessarily but successfully add proto or prototype. Being able to freely access these is the unusual smoking gun of this class of vulnerability. Yeah. So the fix, The CVE patch introduces has own property checks to prevent this access. This is the primary safety mission in React, and it's a fundamental one. Analogical to our out of bounds memory access in C or use after free. So yeah, just has own property is the patch, which is wild to think about.
Yeah, you know what I find super interesting about this too is with the hacker, just in general, they didn't just crash Eduardo's app or many others. They installed, in my opinion, a super sophisticated malware suite. So like when you really think about it, it number one, if you aren't aware, like it literally renamed itself as Apache 2. So that way it just looks completely normal. Then it had like this quote unquote killer script that hunted for other hackers, crypto miners, and literally killed them so it could have all of the CPU. It's not sharing it with nobody. It doesn't want to have a family buffet. It's all mine no matter what. And any competition, it's weeding it out, right? So he literally made an antivirus for the viruses. Now that I think about it, it's a competitive market, man.
Yeah.
If you are using Docker and you just threw up whatever a tutorial told you to do, or you haven't paid a lot of mind, stop running Docker as root, please. App user, put it in your Dockerfile today. It will make like a world of a difference in that regard.
Yeah.
And that right there, I mean, some people, I don't want to say it's vibe coded because that's not necessarily the case. To be honest, I don't even know if vibe coding would leave this vulnerability. I have a feeling that they probably wouldn't now think about it. But I would say like this is just, you learned something, you didn't expand upon it. You just learned what you needed to send something through and you kind of went with it. And in Eduardo's case, that's kind of, I think, what essentially happened here. Now I will say, while a lot of bad things happened, a lot of good things happened. The one thing in particular was how Vercel handled a lot of this. Number one, I think that response from Guillermo, phenomenal. I think it's educational. A lot of people learned a lot by it. The second thing that they did that was really, really impressive, in my opinion, was kind of what I said earlier. HackerOne, CTO Malta Ubel posted it, the bug and the bounties on HackerOne. And I believe they came up with 19. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 19 or 17, something like that. Solutions and edge cases and bugs that were found, small and large, which totaled $750,000 in bounties being paid out to software developers for helping them fix this. Yeah. Over the weekend, 3 days. I believe it was posted Friday afternoon, and by Monday morning, $750,000 was paid out. So like that right there goes to show, number one, the developer community is phenomenal. It took 5 days from the point of it being found to the full fix for the industry being created. So like this is something to this is the opposite of slow. Like this is, and to be honest, by the way, this is also a reason why I love open source. But let's be real. What other industry can you imagine where everyone, all the leaders come together like we need a fix for this right now, and they work together? But the wildest part, in my opinion, is like how Vercel jumped up compared to a lot of people. Number one, Vercel put up the firewall, WAF, their firewall, to block a lot of the attacks. But they knew like hackers are smart. Like there's only so much that you can do there. And that's what led to like the HackerOne program. If you can find a way to bypass our firewall, we'll pay you $50,000. Boom. For each bypass, mind you. And then they had other things as well. But like, I think that goes to show like it's good. It's really good. And I love white hat security anyway. So the community came to basically improve the web for everybody in that regard. And compare that to like the guy hacking Eduardo making $4 a day. You've got people that are like legitimately putting out solutions that are making 5-6 figures for a good scenario. I think that's a good win for everybody.
Yeah, that's the real undertext story that you're getting at, right? You could make this full exploitable suite of tools that took you for how long to make $4, or you participate in these bug bounties and make almost $1 million, right? Like that's shifting the incentive in a really good direction. And I'm really happy to see companies and all these groups come together to like make that a reality. It's a wonderful thing for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the big thing here though is patching is going to be the most efficient way to solve a lot of these things. It's inevitable that stuff is going to pop up, and so firewall can only do so much, and we'd be foolish to think it's going to stop everything. So we really need to continue evolving as things change. But in all of this wildness, there was something which, in the moment, I didn't actually realize was connected. Initially, I didn't realize it was connected. I just thought, like, oh my God, the internet, like, here's another thing that's just going to make things even worse right now. One company, and if you already know what I'm talking about, don't jump ahead of me, y'all. One company tried to preemptively solve this issue, and they broke the internet. It's kind of a tragic comedy. Like, once I realized it was connected, I was like, oh man, I feel bad for them. Like, Cloudflare, I have no hate towards Cloudflare, but they tried to deploy a rule to catch these payloads. The payloads can be large, so they increased their buffer size. It seemed logical, but their internal logging system wasn't ready for that change, and it caused a huge Lua error. And because Cloudflare is Cloudflare, that error propagated instantly. For about 40 minutes, if you try to visit a site that was hosted on Cloudflare, you got a 500 error.
Yeah.
So React didn't just break React apps. It broke, without being intentional, broke all apps hosted on Cloudflare for about 45 minutes.
Yep.
At least the fix was faster in this regard compared to some ones in the past.
Oh.
But, oh my goodness. So React broke Cloudflare without even trying. And that's just wild to me. Kudos to them though for like their write-up on it, I thought was pretty phenomenal. And they were very transparent about it. They were very quick to get it back to where they needed it, and they put out like a full report instantly, which I think is useful for kind of anybody involved, or at least keeping track of it. But it was something that really, I didn't know the two were linked initially, so finding that out like as we were doing this research definitely was interesting to me. I think it's pretty impressive how everybody came together though on this one in particular.
Yeah, definitely take a look at all the show notes we share with y'all folks. And maybe let's transition to the question of the day.
All right, y'all. It's time for everyone's favorite part of the podcast, including mine. It's to ask Danny and Leon a question. Leon, what question do we have today?
Yeah, we have this coming in from Sam. It's so hard not to go off on tangents, but I feel like I need to tighten up my game and stick to the curriculum. I keep getting distracted by side quests. Advice?
That's a really good question. Go ahead and take that, Leon.
Yeah, I think it's very natural for individuals to not know whether or not they're on the right course, and that fear leads a lot of folks to jumping around because they feel like they need to find the right thing. That is often probably the biggest trap when it comes time to like learning new skills, specifically something like learning how to code. The advice I've always given is I don't care what it is, but what you start, you should see through to the end and then evaluate what you're missing. So whether you do 100 devs, free code camp, Odin project, whatever it is, you should start and then complete it. The more you jump around, you're continually having to restart. And that learning process, you never achieve mastery in the things that you need to achieve a mastery in. You can always finish a course and then fill in gaps. Every course you do will have gaps that you fill in. You also need to be tailoring what you're doing to your local market. And any of the courses you do probably won't be tailored to your very unique local market. So you're always going to need to do extra stuff. But in the glorious words of TLC, stick to the rivers and streams that you're used to. Don't go chasing waterfalls, right? The more you go chasing waterfalls, the longer it takes to achieve mastery, and the farther you get away from your end goal, which leads to things like burnout coming into play. Because you keep trying to hit this goal, but you're not giving yourself the ability to hit that goal. And so then all your effort starts to feel like it's not like turning into results. So while it might feel necessary to hop, skip, and jump, don't think in days, weeks, even years. Think in your entire career. If you took a year and that resulted in a 30+ year career, then that year was worth it. And the thing that people focus on, they think about, I need to get the job this year, so maybe I have to try 15 different things to get to that year, to get to that goal. When if you just focused on doing one thing, evaluating what you need more of, and then doing that thing, you would have gotten there in the year or 2 year that it took you, and then have a 30+ year career ahead of you, right? And so for me, the side quests are really coming down to two things. One, it's a defense mechanism for your brain and body to stave off some of the fear of it not working out. And two, most learning comes from doing the hard thing. And our brains protect ourselves from doing the hard thing by convincing ourselves to go do the other thing. So if you can get over that hurdle and consistently do the hard thing, that is sticking to the curriculum that you signed up for, you will get to that level of mastery. You'll get to that goal faster, and you will have built the discipline and the ability to continue to learn, so that in the future, those shiny object syndrome doesn't plague you and you're not jumping around. So yes, stick to what you're doing. I'm trying to hopefully speak to like the why that's important. And then I guess maybe the how can also be a different thing. It's just knowing that if you stick to one thing at a time, you'll get to your result faster than folks that jump around. Because I see it every single day. The folks that jump just most often don't achieve their goals.
It is a lot. There's a lot to this. I feel this question in my soul, man. Like this is, there's a lot here. And the reality is there's the question, but often when I get asked questions, I try to look past the question to other levels. And I know a lot of your answer covered that too. I like to think through the mindset, the habits, the shift, all this that's happening. Because for me, my goal isn't just to answer, but it's to create some kind of change in whoever's feeling this right now. Yeah. So if you feel this in some kind of way, just know that you're not alone. I guarantee you somebody else listening to this right now, they feel it. They recognize it. They identify with this. And so like, as developers, we're naturally curious. You know, we see a shiny new tool, we see a piece of code, it looks a little messy, and we think, I should just fix that real quick. I have been a victim of this many times. I've done this many times. Next thing you know, 4 hours later, you're in like a deep rabbit hole. You've learned a whole lot about something random like Webpack builders. And then now you're like, damn, I haven't even shipped anything. Like I should have shipped something because this was the easy fix that I was working on. Got distracted. Matter of fact, there's a TV show now. Think about it. Shoot, I can't. Malcolm in the Middle. It's like a clip where the father, he walks in his house and notices like in the pantry the light is out. Well, he goes into the garage to get the light bulbs that he has saved. And next thing you know, he's like, oh wow, there's a leak from the car. He gets under the car. He starts fixing all these things that led to him like getting the engine out of the car. His wife comes up like, did you replace the light bulb in the pantry? He's like, I'm working on it. This is that scenario in a nutshell, where it's so easy to get distracted by these things, and it's so easy to like lose momentum on all this stuff, right? And I see developers every day who like glance at their goals and the things that they're doing. You watch a tutorial, but you don't build the app. You read the documentation, but you don't write the code. You bookmark a job posting, but you don't even apply. You're acting like a tourist in your own career. I need you to lock in a little bit. Stop glancing at everything. Stop glancing at the goal and start executing on it, man. The difference between everything in life is execution. The difference between a junior and a senior isn't just natural intelligence. It's the ability to sit down and not get up and solve that problem, or get up when you know you need to, take a walk around the block or something and come back with a solution. Really focus on it. The tech industry as a whole, it's kind of noisy. And every day there's a new framework. Every day there's a brand new library. There's a new React killer. There's a new Java killer. There's a new IDE killer, all this stuff. If you listen to all that noise, you're never going to master anything. You're never going to be great at anything. You got to block it out. And I know it's hard. Twitter is like so convincing. You got to ignore the Twitter trends. You got to ignore what is it? Hacker news cycle. You got to ignore hacker news hype cycles. Clear your mind of the shiny objects for a little bit and focus on what it is that you need to get done. Whether it's learning something, whether it's evolving something, whether it's optimization, whatever it may be. JavaScript hasn't changed massively. Some of the syntax changed, some of the syntactic sugar has changed, some of that stuff. But generally speaking, a lot of the core, the logic hasn't changed, and understanding that will be great. So like quiet the noise so you can kind of like hear yourself think and solve those problems a little bit. I think that's kind of what I look at. So I often go back to one thing where I call it productive procrastination, right? Where it's like, it feels like work. It feels like you're being super productive. It's often what I call the don't misconstrue activity with success, right? Like, or movement with achievement. Like you're moving in a circle, you'll get exhausted. Running on a treadmill, you're literally in the same spot, but you're just running, you're exhausted. This is kind of what that is, right? Like you have so much energy going into something and you're completely distracted by it. And here's like some methods that I would think that can help you like maybe like tighten up your game, quote unquote, that, like you said earlier, right? Like one, I call it like the parking lot method, right? When I'm working on something, say I'm building a feature and I get the urge to refactor something or look up a new library, I don't want to ignore that to a certain degree. So like if you notice, and I know Leon is similar, we've talked about this in the past. Leon's similar in the past, but I keep a notebook on my desk at all times. And yeah, hey, notebook brothers. And there's always a notebook on my desk. And the way that I kind of orchestrate my life is every day starts with a page. Generally speaking, there's a lot of items already on that page. The day doesn't end until that page is solved. Either I've done some action towards that, I've gotten some information towards that, or I've completely solved it. If I've done some action and then I realize, oh, this is something that I can't achieve today because I need XYZ, there's a blocker of some sort, it gets written on tomorrow's page and I continue that way. That's just how I live my life. It works really, really well for me. And everyone has like a different method. In regards to this parking lot method, let's say I get the urge to look this thing up. I write it on the page. And so once my task is done that I'm working on, I can cross it off my page or move it to wherever I need to move it. And then now that those items are on my page, I can research it after the fact. Or I could put it on tomorrow's page. So then that way tomorrow when I have less velocity or less items on my quote unquote page, I can kind of go there and be like, and it's basically tell my brain, look, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying no for right now. Like, let's keep our priorities in check. And that's where I always come back to the same thing with procrastination. I think procrastination really just means it's not a priority. So whatever you're working on in that moment, by getting distracted, you've told your brain, it's not a priority right now. This has become the priority. You've reprioritized your actions. But the reality is, if something is deemed a priority, it should never be reprioritized unless something is breaking that priority. Something extreme, not something small. A fleeting emotion or idea should not be an extreme to derail a day or derail a week or derail a month unless there's something weighing it down. So practice the parking lot method. I would also say if like, it seems like the question was posed from someone earlier in their career, define your critical path and your career path. Like, we talk about critical paths, especially in like consultancies. This is something that you talk about. But like, what is the straightest line between where we are and the money, the finished product, the goal, the reward? If I hired a contractor to fix my roof and like I found him mowing my lawn because it looked messy when he was up there, I'm like, what the I can't even say it. What are you doing? Yeah. I'd be mad. I'd be irritated. Even though mowing the lawn is work. That's work. It's effort. It ain't fixing the leak in the roof. So don't do that. Be your own boss. And if you hired yourself to do a task to finish today and you catch yourself doing a side quest, what would you do? Would you be like, man, I'd fire this dude right now. What is he doing? Right? It's kind of why I keep myself accountable. The other thing is, and I'm big on this, I don't know if I don't even know if I've talked about this on the podcast. I'm big on visual clarity or like visual reminders. I'm big on sticky notes, or I'm also really big on index cards. And so if in between my monitors and this camera is a wall, and on this wall I have like probably 24, 25 index cards on there right now. Each one has like a goal that I'm chasing. Some of them are really attainable, easy to reach goals, and some are massive, scary, intimidating goals that if I showed people, they're like, oh, this is never happening. But every single time someone has said that, they should see the stack of cards that I have on the side of scary goals that people said weren't happening that did end up happening.
Yeah.
Right? I love those scary goals. And so the thing with the reason why I use index cards on my wall, which my wife hates, but thankfully it's just in my home office, it's a daily reminder of what I'm chasing. And so for me, sometimes like I'll be in a mood where like, hey, I'm going to binge watch XYZ. Nothing wrong with that. But like if I'm about to spend 8 hours binge watching a show on Netflix and I see my goals, I'm like, have I done anything towards this? And if I look through this and I say no, and I'm content with that, it is what it is. But maybe I'll be like, you know, I haven't done anything towards this. Maybe instead of 8 hours, I knock it down to 4. Still have my show and entertainment, but now I'm like 4 hours of productivity. I literally saved myself a bunch of time just by prioritizing certain things. So I think that's a good one. And of course, the last one, if I'm being real, and I think more people need to do this if they're not doing it, they probably should, is the good enough check, where it's like, if I didn't build this, but I was a user of this product and it worked like this, would I be okay with that? Would I be content? If the answer is yes, go for it, dude. If the answer is no, fix it. And I think when it comes to things like your portfolio sites, your side projects, people lose sight of that. They're so proud of the thing that they built because it's impressive, that they're like, the world should feel the way that I feel. But they don't owe you that. So it's like, if you've built something and you're like, well, it's cool for the skills that I have now, that's more of an incentive to be like, let me learn some more to improve this and create this to be a better version of XYZ. I think that's the thing that people should be focused on, right? Like, and it goes back to one thing. You can't really optimize or do a good enough check on something if you don't have something that's good enough to check. Build a thing, put it out there, get it up. I think that's like the most important thing here.
Yeah.
The hardest part, and we can kind of close on this, the hardest part of software engineering really isn't the syntax. It isn't even like the algorithms. The hardest part is honestly the discipline and the commitment to yourself this whole time. The fight isn't really against bugs in code. The fight is honestly against the distractions in your head. That's why you find some people excelling in this field, some people aren't. Like, the hardest part is sitting down for 8 hours a day and just coding on something. And some people aren't conditioned for that. And like, you have to build it up. The hardest part is having 50 tabs open and not freaking out about it. You know, you open so you can finish one task. You start in the morning and you end up with 50 at the end of the day. That's the battle. And if you win the battle of your focus, you win the war of your career. As weird as that is to say that, like, as I'm saying, I'm like, it's kind of weird, but like,
No, it's
hopefully
good.
that kind of makes sense for you. And so I'll say this, your motivation, it's great, but your consistency, your commitment, and your habit's going to keep you going. You don't need to be motivated to code today. You just really need to be consistent. So stop watching tutorials, start building something, you learn by doing stuff. So don't spend your whole time watching somebody else do it. Be the person that you watch. And last but not least, if you get distracted, don't be hard on yourself. It's not the end of the world. Acknowledge it. Audit your actions, which is what I always come back to at the end of the day. Audit your actions every single day. You're not going to be perfect. But perfectionism, even the biggest, best engineers in the world couldn't prevent a hack that mined cryptocurrency on people's websites. You're not going to be able to prevent a lot of stuff too. Just bounce back, make a masterclass on how you handle your fall off and bounce back, and be the person that you're proud to be. It's been real, it's been fun, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Peace, y'all.